Hi, everybody. Today I wanted to demonstrate kind of an interesting pattern for execution of agents in the Itential platform using FlowAI. So I'm actually looking at a device health check agent definition at the moment. One of the things that I kind of wanted to call attention out to the agent construction was the prompt piece. But let's go ahead walk through the entire thing. So we have our identity prompt providers set. Those are mostly background. We're going to focus on the prompt in a second. For tools, I have given it some PyITS commands, or some PyITS tools rather. One for run show command and another one for run dynamic tests, right? We're doing device health checks, so those are kind of appropriate tooling, and we have some of the devices onboarded. We could also use native tooling from the Itential platform. In this case, we're using MCP for this particular use case. And I've also given it access to device health check reports, which is a workflow that or a project rather, that it gives us the capability of using templatized reports inside of the Itential platform. But I want to focus more around the prompt itself. Typically, when you define an agent, your prompt needs to have special attention to detail, especially in our case. We're very focused on React agents, right? Agents that will reason and act. So typically you have a reasoning loop and you will have thought, action patterns. And most of the time the action is a tool call. In our case, our prompt is fairly empty here. So in my system prompt, I have used the following prompt, and prompt is encased by curly braces. Now that is a convention that we use in Itential for variables. And I will explain the reason behind this in a second. And then also use our prompt just says execute the test required and send a test email. Now I have a tool already that's defined for sending test emails and things like that. It'll just use that tool. Now the other thing that I want to call attention to, and not this particularly, I want to open, so let me go and find my device health check agent, is the way that we are defining this agent. So this will be the entry point, and in my case the entry point for my agent happens to be a workflow, and this is one of those things that I wanted to call attention to. Most of the demos that we have recorded, and I have recorded personally, that are out there, we are triggering agents from FlowAI. So that is a possibility, but obviously this is very much a builder type page, a builder type window. In our case, we will have most likely an entry point that looks like this. It'll be an operator portal where you have some sort of either API entry point or a manual entry point or a schedule and so forth, right? So something like this. So in our case, we're going to be using a manual entry point with a form. This will in turn launch a workflow, and that workflow will do a couple things. One of the things that it will do is it'll be rendering a prompt. So I have actually defined agent context to be a prompt. And what that'll do is it's actually taking in 4 variables from that form. And if you notice, right, and then you can probably kind of read through some of these things, it'll lead you to the conclusion of what the use case is. We're doing health checks on devices, right? But one of the things that we're doing is we're putting parameters around the health check type. Obviously the device host name, the severity threshold, and the remediation mode. And if you look at down here, what renders is, it's an actual full-on system prompt for the agent. Right, it starts by saying you're an agent performing governed infrastructure health checks, task context, health check type, routing health, the device is blah. So I can do things like modifying this to say environmental. Let's see, what is the variable? Let's see, environmental health. If I change this to environmental, it'll have the health check type here, environmental health, and then we have variables in this Jinja template that will say, if the health check type is platform health, then these are the things that we care about. We care about CPU, we care about memory utilization, blah, blah, blah. We also have conditionals that say, if the health check is a routing health check, we care about BGP, we care about the routing table health, and so forth. Now, the device that we're using doesn't have BGP, but you kind of get the idea. Security posture checks. So I actually have the ability of now, by just doing this, and by breaking up, I will confirm, by having the ability of just rendering the prompt ahead of time, I have actually effectively now given my agent a bunch of personalities rather than just having one. So this is an interesting execution pattern that we can afford just because I have the ability to trigger agents via workflows, and I also happen to have the capability of rendering templates beforehand. These prompts could actually come from anywhere, right? One other pattern that we could start thinking about is because of the Itential platform, we have the ability to, kind of integrate with many, many, many things via workflow. I could launch these agents and pull the prompt from, say, a GitLab repo or an S3 bucket or something like that. And then we just call the agent with a templatized prompt. If you look at here, context for that agent will be the output of render prompt. So let's go ahead and trigger this agent. And I'm going to go ahead in FlowAI and I'm going to go back to the missions window. And let's move it this way because I want to have it real time. And I like to do the split view thing. Where is it? This one. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and trigger this guy. And we're going to do first, let's do platform health. I'm going to pick a device from my dropdown. Now, all these are also dropdowns. So from an entry point perspective, I'm going to keep this as warning. And we're going to do report only. From an entry point perspective, I have the ability of restricting right on the platform how this automation or how this agent rather gets executed undefined, right? There's no room for error. And this is one of the things that we discuss with our customers quite a bit is also not all agents, right? We're not building ChatGPT. And as such, we're not doing NLP functions, right? We're not putting a chat window. Now, could you put a text area here and give the agent text, instructions in text? Absolutely, you could, right? You can pass all this data to the agent as context via workflow if you wanted to, or directly via entry point. So now that agent's triggering there. That's all going here. We're going to go refresh that guy here, and I'm going to go modify my size. Okay, so now that we've triggered our agent here, let's go back into FlowAI and look at the actual mission log to see what's going on down here. So now my agent's going through its checks and its reason that it needs to validate and it needs to execute some tests and send some of the device. So I'll execute the platform health check systematically. Let me start by running both diagnostic commands simultaneously. So it's doing its thing. It's going to execute some tool calling. We may have to, it might take a minute here. So I'm going to go let it do its thing, and then we'll come back and check the results. But I actually want to do this a couple times because I want to launch 2 different tests or 2 different executions of the same agent with that templatized prompt so that we understand. Well, actually, we can go back and look at this agent that got called here. So let's look at this prompt. I got the agent performing govern infrastructure health checks and a task contest. You see here, health check type, platform health. And if I expand this, it's not gonna get truncated. It's a platform health right now. That's what it's doing. And the target device is iOS, CSR, AWS, one. So we have this kind of switching context in here, and we're gonna go trigger the next one, and we'll go ahead and kind of compare it. Let's go ahead and let it do its thing. Okay, so the agent has finished. Let's go and see. We got all steps completed successfully. We got some parse successfully commands, ran, critical, some alarms and thresholds. Everything seems to be healthy. And then we have an overall status healthy down here. But we also have, because we had that agent send, let's hide this conclusion here. We had to do an email report. So let's go ahead and look at that email. And let's go back and see. And some of the previous tests weren't some of the other devices that I was using for testing before this weren't that healthy, but this one seems to have a good status report that we can send. So now we have a status report down here, and I'm going to put it here to the side because we actually want to compare them one to the other. So we have metrics at a glance, CPU, low utilization, memory 11%, memory free 2 gigs, and we got a detailed report of the device here. And we got a bunch of, top CPU consuming processes. Everything is very low, very healthy. Obviously, this is a lab device, so not a whole lot of, drama going on here. But the idea here is that we have the platform health check captured. So let's go ahead back into here, and I have already refreshed. And let's go back into missions. And I'm going to go expand my window here again. And now I want to check let's do an environmental, let's do interface, a little bit more dynamic, more dramatic. This guy has a lot of sub interfaces that we use for provisioning. So we're going to go do that. I would do report only for now. We're not suggesting actions or anything like that. So now we're going to go ahead, refresh here, hide this a little bit. While that refreshes, we're going to go back and highlight. So this workflow already finished, right? Because that's the out agent that we were executing before. And while that refreshes also, we're going to go back into this one. So this is the second execution that I did. And now we can see that your agent performing a governed infrastructure health check, same personality at the top. But we have an interface health check that's being triggered on the same device. So we're using the same entry point in our operations manager to accomplish 2 goals, right? And in our case, we actually have 4. So we have more flexibility. We have interface. We have 5 things that we could do. Platform, routing, security, environmental, all those. So you start thinking about when you have something like a NOC team or something like that, you can actually expand the range of an agent like this to help people in a position like the NOC or something like that to do their jobs. Whenever they see alarming going on from a management tool or something like that, they could come here and launch these agents. Or better off, maybe that you could launch these health checks by yourself. Or maybe you could schedule some of these, or they could be launched, via API from a management tool. So that's just kind of cool. I think about this use case, and this is one of those that kind of lets you expand a little bit the range of something like FlowAI and what it can do, because it's not just, I can trigger agents that only do one thing, but I can also start, and this is a question that comes up often from my customers, like, how about I have agents that have duplicate roles and duplicate responsibilities? Can I go ahead and templatize that? I'm going to go ahead and actually put this in separate views. We can focus on FlowAI now that we're done triggering things, and we're just going to wait for this guy to finish. Okay, so now our second agent execution has finished. We have, here we go. So we have the agent actually tried a few things, and because we're doing a fairly dynamic thing here, it ran a couple commands that weren't valid. So it's pretty interesting. We could actually govern this via prompt, so we can tell it what commands to run. But in this case, I kind of just let it rip. So those are good things, right? Lessons learned, because it executed a couple invalid tools, and that's, this is waste of, execution time and tokens and so forth. But it actually pulled up a couple commands here, what we wanted to do. So we were very focused on an interface health check. It did show interfaces, show interface summary. It found 62 interfaces, not unheard of, right? On a big chassis. In this case, we just have a bunch of virtual interfaces. We have 45 active interfaces and so forth, and then we got some data, and more importantly, we got a report. So I can go and expand my email report, and I'm going to compare it side by side with the other one. So we have, let's line these up. We have device health check report, same device. This was a platform health. This was an interface health. Same agent, same trigger, same entry point, totally different use cases. And you look at totally different reports. The formatting and everything is very similar because I've instructed the agent to use the same format on that kind of report project. So I have the ability to actually templatize this. If I could brand them if I wanted to. I could put logos, I could put whatever. I could make it more concise. But you kind of get the idea of now how you have multiple use cases off of this one single agent by just using a couple features from the Itential platform, right? So, the power of workflow, being able to trigger agents, being able to make some decisions beforehand, and doing a lot more stuff there. So you can start thinking about this pattern now. I can actually do a lot with it, right? I could execute a bunch of deterministic activities and then trigger an agent to go ahead and validate and summarize. If I wanted to do a health check on a device after I did some provisioning, I could do the provisioning entirely in a deterministic way and then trigger an agent after the fact. So this kind of opens up a lot of possibilities. Very, very, very useful in my opinion. Kind of an advanced use case, right? But I think it's extremely useful, especially when you start looking at mixing and matching deterministic technology with reasoning and the power of FlowAI agents. I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover today. And thanks for tuning in.